consumer market, the history of the consumer market in the United States, you have to take a look at some major events that happened. First off was the urbanization of America, that moving obviously from the farm to the cities. And that was generated by growth, Western expansion, and it was on track. The last years of Andrew Jackson's presidency, there was approximately 15% of the people lived in the cities, 85% on the farm, and stayed quite stagnant through the Civil War. But after Reconstruction, especially in the South, there was a gradual rise. More and more people were moving to the city. This was a very, in historical terms, incremental. There was nothing on the national scene that was precipitating a great change. 1892, you had Sears and Roebuck. Started with a actual store in Chicago, and then went almost within the same year to a catalog sales story all across the country. Because remember now, by this time, still some 80% of the people lived in the country.
Brick and mortar retail real estate's been around from this first small town. You had the general store. The general store evolved to kind of Main Street retail. Main Street retail kind of evolved to what a lot of people would estimate as a grocery drug shopping center, where you had a grocery store on one side, a drugstore, and some shops in the place.
1916, Clarence Saunders opens the first Piggly Wiggly and introduced America to what would become the supermarket. So you can see this gradual rise away from, well, example, if you go to Chicago today, you will find in almost any residential area, at every intersection, are 4 buildings. And there would be a bakery, a pharmacist, a grocery store, and usually a bar. And the proprietors lived upstairs. And that was life. So there wasn't any open air market. There wasn't even any stores to go to. There were no, as we would call them, side by side by side. And then this gradual growth fueled that, and it took off. People who lived in the South and other parts of the country on the farm, they had nothing other than maybe a general store in their town or their village, and they got everything there. And it was a very limited amount of product. But now that we have Sears, we have Jewel Tea Company, and there's another half a dozen of these that the people in the country call them tinkers, because unlike Sears and Roebuck, they would show up in a horse-drawn carriage, a wagon, or later on a pickup, and they'd have everything they needed. And you could buy sewing thread, and you could buy spices off the back of a truck. And still that growth was steady. And then you have World War I. World War I sent million-something people overseas who came back with totally different ideas. You had a little bit of a baby boom. Not yet, just a little bit of a baby boom. And these Sears, now Pennies, now Montgomery Ward, I mean, one after another, they are filling this gap for much needed product. More and more people are moving to the cities. We start to begin to see the very beginning of what we now call developments or subdivisions, because usually the inner part of the city was, the property was already housing, and remember those 4 stores, and there wasn't any place to do it. Downtown areas were business areas, rather expensive property, and these filled the gap, and even through the Depression years, which was probably not a big factor to specifically the rural areas, because most of these people they had their subsistence. What they really needed was those other things, those clothes and boots and belts and everything you needed that you could not readily get at the general store. And they still thrived, even through the Depression. Of course, then the big one, World War II, 1945-46, more than 1 million men come home. And within no time at all, we have the largest slug of consumers, future consumers, ever known to mankind, 55 to 60 million. Minneapolis, an agricultural industrial town. The Flour City, as in the flour used to make bread. Flour City, USA, that was its nickname, because all the wheat from anywhere and everywhere came there and was ground into flour and sold back. And it really, everything around it, including hardwood forest, fueled products that you couldn't get anywhere else in the country. And so downtown, they had experimented by the late 60s with the mall idea. Now remember now, your old-fashioned downtown were, as you say, brick and mortar, store side by side by side. Very expensive retail property. Well, if you've been to Minneapolis, you know that the winter is from August to April. And I don't care how well you can drive in ice and snow, or how much you like 20 below zero, you're not going to do a lot of shopping. So they came up with this really neat idea to connect the downtown buildings with walkways. And then once you got in one, you could go from one to the other. You could walk inside one store to the other. Well, the simple mechanics of it was there are not a lot of places like this, but you could duplicate it. You could build inside a structure, store to store to store. So when you got in there, it was nice and warm, air conditioned in the summer. You had a variety of things, and you could set aside a designated area for the food court. You could cover just about any and everything anybody wanted. The big ones, Sears, man, they were Johnny on the spot. They were some of the first anchors anywhere. Here close by, Southland Mall. Probably completed late 60s. Goldsmiths, which was a local-owned department store, on one end, Sears on the other. So you got two anchors there and all these stores inside. And
then the malls kind of grew and got bigger and better and got great, and then they kind of fell out of favor in favor of, in 1981, what we called big box retail.
When I hear the term big box stores, I typically think of Target, Walmart. In my younger years, it was Kmart. And it's interesting that where I live in Memphis, about a mile away, I actually have a super Target and a super Walmart next door to each other. But you go back in the history a little bit of how these stores came about. I think it backs all the way up to maybe even the first decade of the 1900s, when stores began to streamline and began to go with chain stores, to where it was no longer just a mom and pop store. They would move into different locations with the exact same product. You get into the 1950s and you see America become homogenized. You begin to see, every exit on main interstates all look the same, and that included big box stores. Walmart begins as a 5 and dime store in Bentonville, Arkansas. And in 1962, Sam Walton created the company, but by 1988, they had their first supercenter. And it was a newer concept because now, instead of customizing service for a customer, it was, here's the product in bulk, grab a basket, grab what you need. You look at these stores and it's just a huge, on a plot of land, it's a huge square building that basically looks kind of like a warehouse. And you roll into it, you have everything from groceries to clothing to sports and recreation and even hunting supplies in some stores to hardware. You buy it all in one place.
And then Walmart comes in with this idea of buying rather cheap land on the outskirts of town and putting in a cookie cutter type operation, which could also then be expanded, which starts off with dry goods and some other stuff, and maybe farm and garden or something like that. And then now there's almost nothing you can't buy there.
The big box stores problem and what a lot of people call the retail apocalypse that's taking place of a lot of stores like Staples and Toys R Us and Payless, they lost touch with the customer. They forgot it's not just about price and availability, it's about an experience.
When Walmart would land into certain towns or cities, that would put those mom and pop stores out of business, which I think is kind of ironic that he started it like that, and then it begins to quickly put a lot of people out of business. It starts in Bentonville, Arkansas, it quickly begins to spread throughout the Mid-South, and then it, of course, is now one of the biggest global companies that we have in 2018. I can go to Walmart and buy everything I need, and plus I can eat at Subway, or I can eat at McDonald's, I can get nails done, I can get haircut, glasses, everything. It's all in one place. But Super Target, of course, has added to this, and they've tried to compete with it a little bit, but it's difficult. I will tell you too that Walmart as a company, you know, of course they have their Walmart neighborhood markets, and that's kind of a subsidiary of them. It's not necessarily a big box store, but you think about it being like a big box grocery store almost. My wife is from a little small town south of Tupelo, and a Walmart neighborhood market was brought in, and it put the mom and pop grocery store out of business. And then Walmart neighborhood markets closed because Walmart was doing some consolidation things, and so now they were without a grocery store for like 8 months, and Dollar General finally moved in and tried to make the most of it. But it's interesting to watch how big box stores can take over and completely monopolize a market with the whole concept being that they were going to provide all the services in a positive manner.
Shoe stores are one category that's getting a little bit disrupted, but they're realizing that they can create an experience where that person can come back in. Office Depot, office supplies are a commodity. The new Office Depot, you won't recognize because it's downsized, but it's going to have WeWork space in there, it's going to have a FedEx, it's going to have a cafe. That's all part of Office Depot. It's really, really cool. They opened the first one in Florida, and so they're going to downsize, they're going to become more in touch with the consumer, providing an experience, or they're going to be out of business. Like Toys R Us got out of business. But you have big boxes that really know how to do it. Walmart continues to grow. And you know, Walmart is the second largest online retailer to Amazon right now. They get both markets. And they're also going to cover the last mile. A lot of people say, okay, I want to order online, but I want it today. Walmart, Targets of the world, and Amazon through Whole Foods and their partnership with Kohl's are going to do that, what they call the last mile. The big box centers that were seen in the past that were built from the 80s through really 2003 are gone.
Amazon was created in 1994 by Jeff Bezos with a $300,000 loan from his parents. Jeff was fascinated with early computer technology, and he learned to do basic programming at a very early age. He graduated from Princeton in 1986 with degrees in computer science and electrical engineering, and he began his career on Wall Street, but he hated it. Jeff was able to forecast a major storm coming in the form of the internet, and he began searching for a product to launch for an online retail store, which he saw books as the golden ticket. Books at that time had no comprehensive catalog, and remember, this is the world before Google. Google wouldn't be founded until late 1998. So a searchable catalog / bookstore seemed like the perfect product launch, and in fact, it was. So in July of 1995, Amazon opened its virtual store with a very simplistic design and a catalog of several 100,000 books. Jeff spent $0 on advertising, and the entire thing kind of launched with word of mouth only. Much to everybody's surprise, it caught fire really, really fast. Within a month, books had been sold in all 50 states and 45 countries all around the world. Jeff saw the early days as sort of an internet land grab, and to do this, he decided to take a lot of losses on books in order to get customers and spend tons of money on coding and software development, which made a lot of his earliest investors rather nervous. And most people at that time really did not have much faith that Amazon was gonna last. Then in 1997, Amazon goes public, raising the capital that allowed them to expand into other product offerings. By 1998, they had acquired the Internet Movie Database, giving them a huge comprehensive repository for movie information. And by the end of 1998, they were selling physical media, CDs, movies, and other products as well. By the year 2000, you could buy pretty much anything on Amazon you wanted. By 2011, Amazon had desolated Borders Books, one of its biggest brick and mortar competitors, and by almost bullying the prices of novels, they pretty much doomed the competition around the world. And then of course they released the Kindle Reader, which was almost the nail in the coffin, because they ended up grabbing the large part of the e-reader market share from the get-go. And now people are coming back to Amazon exclusively for all of their e-reader content as well.
Amazon is an interesting company. Amazon makes no money off their Amazon deliveries. They make most of their profit off their cloud computing. That's where their main profit. They still haven't learned how to really deliver efficiently. I mean, they deliver very quickly to you, but Amazon has to deal with that 35% of the dresses and clothes that people buy online are returned. Okay, and those, you're offering free returns and all that, and that's a big costly category for them, because like the dresses are returned, can you resell them? Like my wife will order 5 dresses, try 5 of them on, return 4 of them, and that's a category. But Amazon exploited what was already out there. We had Sears. Okay, Sears could have been Amazon if they had learned their technology. You had a Sears catalog. Every Christmas and birthdays, you dovetailed the catalog. You order gifts. They had distribution centers all around the country. It was catalog retail. All Amazon did is say, let's make electronic. Let's put it from people on their computers and then to their smartphones, and then whatever way you want to connect to us, we can sell. They just took catalog retailing, a concept that has been around since the 20s, and exploited it and made it better. Where places like Sears, Kmart just fell to the wayside. They didn't embrace technology and how they didn't embrace the experience. They didn't embrace how important convenience is to people.
In 2003, I actually opened my Amazon account. At the time, I was at college, and my normal routine on the weekends was I would go to the mall. Just that's the way that most college students at the time would hang out on Friday nights. You either go do something around town, and I enjoyed shopping, and so I ended up at the mall most Friday nights, hanging out with friends and shopping. And I couldn't find a CD. It was a local band called King Conga. I couldn't find the album. You can't just go to Best Buy and buy an album with a local band like that. So one of my friends said, why don't you Google it? And Google was still a fairly new deal as well back in 2002, 2003. And so I was familiar with Google. Obviously, I'd used it for a few college projects. And so I Googled something good King Conga, and lo and behold, it pops up on Google. Amazon had a few copies of it. I clicked the link, and there it was. And that was the first item that I ever purchased on Amazon. Made my little account and purchased the CD August 5th, 2003.
Amazon has definitely upped the game a little bit and has made it very easy. I can shop at the click of a button now. You know, stores are trying to get to that point. I can order all my Walmart goods online. I can order your Target. They've just started that, where I can pull up and they'll deliver my stuff to my car. But as we go more and more digital, people are not shopping as much, and so the whole framework has changed. Walmart, when they started, it was, let's, you know, not take some specialty product to sell. They would take like dish detergent and put 3,000 bottles of dish detergent on a pallet at the very front of the store, and it was like, hey, I probably need some dish detergent because I'm walking past. And so it is gonna change the way that we buy things. I think a lot of people are not buying, you know, the things that aren't necessary for their homes because they're not going in a store anymore.
What's interesting is Amazon's customer awareness and name recognition is now completely staggering. If you take a poll at any grade school level, ask the students what Amazon is, 9 out of 10 of them will say the online shopping network. Less than 10% would actually think of or reply the largest river in the world, and most companies would pay millions and millions and millions. They'd probably give their entire profit margin for a year to have that type of name recognition.
At the end of the day, people still want the experience. If you want to compete against Amazon, you give the customer a great experience in your store. They crave that. They want that. They want to come to you and they want to have a good experience where you know who they are.
It will be interesting to see the future of Amazon as they're now sort of taking a track that Sears and Roebuck took in the 60s and 70s, and they're wanting to launch these more brick and mortar locations. It'll be interesting to see if they keep their eye on the ball and if they can remain the largest online retailer in the world.
It was actually in Memphis, a guy named Dan Pogue and Mr. McEwen created Pogue and McEwen shopping centers, and they built Saddle Creek Shopping Center. What they wanted to do is take mall-type tenants, the Apple stores, Abercrombie and Fitch, Sephora, and pull them out of the mall, put them into a human-scale outdoor environment that did not have anchor tenants, did not have the Macy's or the Sears attached to it, where you could drive up to those stores, you could stroll along a promenade and see them, and it really started there, and then it's morphed into bigger lifestyle centers, malls with lifestyle portions attached to them. I mean, a lot of malls, what they call demalled, where they had the mall, the main mall, but then they had a section that was that human element, that human scale type design that made you feel good, that you went and met people for dinner or drinks, and you walked around and you shopped while you were there. And it's just consistently evolved. Now it's evolved where those lifestyle centers are part of mixed-use developments. And that's really the most sustainable model. But it really goes back to main streets, where we had people living above the retail. The retailers had a built-in marketplace. You didn't have to drive to the shopping center. You had customers already there. And if you go shopping, I know my wife and I, when we go travel around the country, we love to go to that cool, what we call cool streets around the country, whether it's Bloor Street in Toronto, Michigan Avenue in Chicago, where they have all this density together, people living, working, playing, and shopping together, and it's just a really cool street. And it gives you that shopping environment, and it's just sort of evolved into that point.
Of course, this has been a European philosophy for years because of the high price of land. You can't have this unlimited elbow room to do what you want to with space. You take Aldi's, for instance. If I could never go to Kroger, never go to any of these places again, and just go to where they just open up the crate and stick it out there. It's reminiscent of the old country store. And where they're really successful is where they're in a place where people can either walk there or drive there in 5 minutes. And right across is this, right across is that, right across is this. And the smart people are doing just like they're going to do in Crosstown. They're putting all this together under one roof or in one general area. I think it's sort of ironic that that's the old Crosstown Sears. You know, and a large part of it is going to be health related, but there's going to be other shops in there, other things, all in one place. You walk in, it's safe because it's confined and the controlled access. And I think that may be, of course, it's going to take a sizable investment, and then you're going to be left with the bane of all this, which is empty facilities that are not being used. I'm always reminded of a village in England called Iceland, where you could watch about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning the ladies ride their bicycle down to one place that had everything that they would need for that day. And the reason they only bought enough for that day is that their refrigerators were the size of a small trunk, and that was it. So there wasn't any reason to buy bulk in anything. And it was a constant fluid thing. And this is, in kind of a oblique way, this is what that is. This is a small village in a confined area with places convenient enough that you don't have to fight the traffic. You don't have to fight lack of personnel. You don't have to fight long lines. You just don't have the time for it. And that's also been a driving force. Just how long do you have 2.5 hours to spend at a big box? Do you really?
Malls are recognizing, hey, we got this great real estate. Okay, we have retailers already built in. But now malls are recognizing that we got to provide that third meeting place for teenagers, that third meeting place for senior citizens, the third meeting place for mothers just finishing their yoga classes. 75% of shoppers are female, so it really is a female-dominant industry, and they want to meet with their friends. They want to have an experience. Malls have recognized that, but in addition to that change, they're starting to put, they have these big parking lots, and they're starting to put hotels in those parking lots. They're starting to put apartment complexes in those parking lots and trying to make it a mixed use. They've demalled, they've opened up some spaces and created lifestyle portions to the mall to make it more attractive for dining and entertainment options. They're starting to put in Dave & Buster's and those type tenants into a mall to make it more entertainment oriented, rather than, because you're losing Sears. Your Macy's will eventually downsize or go away. Dillard's is holding its own. JCPenney's may or may not make it. So you have to come up with new anchors. That could be a hotel that's a part of the mall. Okay, you tear down the anchor and you build a luxury hotel that's part of there. It builds in shoppers for your mall, but it also provides you another revenue stream. You're going to go into a store in the future. It's going to have facial recognition. This is kind of Big Brother looking over you. It's going to say, hey, Sean Massey, you just walked into my store. The last time you were here, you bought X, X, and S, and you might want to buy this. Like maybe it's a wine store and you want to buy a good Bordeaux or a great Merlot or something along that line. It's going to come up on my phone. It's going to recognize, Sean Massey just entered my store. We saw his face. We know he's here. And we're going to give him suggestions of what to buy on my phone. So it's that combination of technology. Stores have never been able to do that. Amazon's been able to do that by mining your data. Like, hey, I know you buy like True Religion jeans. So, you know, True Religion jeans, people who bought True Religion jeans also bought this in the past. So we're going to suggest it to you.
I do see a possible shopping future where things are more virtual. Maybe we are able to put on, I don't know, 3D virtual goggles and look at the items in a store, and then maybe be able to check out and just have them delivered just you know, within a day or maybe even the same day with delivery services that are coming around. I think as consumers, we want the shopping experience, but at the same time, we want to have everything immediately, instantaneously, and we want the convenience that the online experience gives us. So someone in the future can sort of corner the market on giving you the extreme convenience along with that shopping experience. I think that would be the next big thing.
Amazon showed you how much your time is worth. Like, do I go park in a parking lot, walk a half mile through the parking lot to get to the mall, and then have to walk around this big gargantuan mall to go get something that I could order online?
I'm an old school type. I like to go in a store with a basket and walk around and talk to people and talk to the cashier, but I think that's on the way out. You see Kmart has already pretty much closed their doors. Sears, which is kind of a big box store at a time, they're on the way out as well. And then you look at specialty big box stores like Toys R Us, they've closed completely. And they were the hub of toys when it came to big box stores because everybody's buying things online. Now, will we get to a point where we buy those, light bulbs and toothbrushes and toothpaste online? I just don't know if that's gonna ever happen. I think that there will be some type of brick and mortar store that always exists, but shopping online is definitely changing how these companies approach things. Walmart has done a good job of adapting. They've added fuel centers to their stores. They've added to where you can order online. Walmart.com, I think, has free shipping, and it's almost 2-day shipping now to compete with Amazon. So they're trying to shift that direction. But I also think too, and this is kind of a different thought, you think about these stores in different income areas and how higher income areas may be able to shop online and lower income areas, due to access to technology, they may never be able to. But at the same time, is a store like this gonna last in a lower income area? And so that's the struggle too, and that's the challenge I think they're gonna face at least in the next 5 or 10 years.
What's the future of it? Well, as far as the big box, kind of dismal. Buying habits have changed. People are more and more involved in other things, so they have less leisure time. It's not that they have less leisure money, they have less leisure time to actually go through that whole process. Now, that's not all that happened. In the meantime, while America is experimenting with how do we get product in our hands, downtowns are suffering. I mean, they are really suffering. So what did they do? They created these large open spaces. Downtown Memphis, at one time you look in 1950s photo of downtown Memphis. I mean, it's bustling. This is Wednesday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The streets are full of cars and people walking. There's Lowenstein's, there's Goldsmiths, there's one right after the other. And people are, and 5 or 6 shoe stores in a block. Now it's 1970s going into 80s, and they're all you see is paper blowing down the street. There's nobody there. What shops are there closed? There's a few places left. Mr. Peanut's there. There's a hot dog here, a place there. Maybe a few specialty restaurants. Nothing else. So what do? We create an outdoor version of the indoor mall. We go in, we shut off some streets, put a trolley down the middle to attract people to come down there, control traffic on the main street, theatrical in the Orpheum on one side, then you have Cook Convention on the other. It worked.
I do think that our generation wants more customized service, which is an idea of the 50s, really. That I want to walk in a store and I want someone to greet me and ask me how they can help me. And that even my parents weren't like that. You walked in and you did your business and you left because that was the way that the big box model was set up. Versus now we're going back to trying to get that customized service. But I think also we've been inundated with technology for so many years now that I really think that there's a generation coming up that may actually think that technology isn't as cool as we did. In the early 2000s, we were like, wow, this is amazing. It's so normal in the earlier generations' lifestyle now that I don't think they see it as an added benefit. So I think they're looking at it very differently. And so when we talk about, go and shop in 10 or 15 years from now, it's going to be interesting to see that Walmart and Target may have to become more specialized. I know that there's people my age and a little younger that they may not shop at Target, but they're going to go to that specialty food store to get whatever food makes them, fits their diet. They're going to go to that small technology shop where that service is just perfect, and they're going to pay that price because that's what the service that they want. And so I think that as much as we're advancing and as much as we're ordering online and different things, I do think that we're going to see kind of a backtrack or a rerun of using these customer service skills. In the 1920s, there were stores that their motto, one of the earliest advertising mottos, was give the lady what she wants. And now you get online and nobody's advertising to you. Nobody's saying, hey, you should buy this. Now we see ads pop up in different things, but we've, in this generation, totally ignore them for the most part. But I think we're gonna get to a point again where we're tired of having to do all this ourselves, and we'll find it as a luxurious way of life to go in and people ask us how they can help us.
There are retail concepts that are out there that we don't even know about yet. They're in somebody's mind or some teenager's mind of something that could be really cool experience or a really cool product that we want to sell that will become backfilling. The names will change, but that experience won't change for the retailer. People still want to shop. And I think that's going to be the critical, is embrace the change, but don't be critical of what's changing. And like I said, I go back to Whitehaven, they said, well, all the fast casual, all the casual dining restaurants all moved to South Haven. Yeah, they did move to South Haven, but Whitehaven didn't. The population didn't decline. It changed, and a lot of those casual dining restaurants are out of business today. Not because they moved to South Haven, not because they moved to Horn Lake. Casual dining restaurants are on a decline. Everybody wants the fast casuals, the Chipotles of the world, the Tacos for Life, all those really cool concepts. Whether it's dining, whether it's retail, cool is in, engaging the consumer is in, and it's all about the customer experience.
And we haven't even talked about the effect of Walmart on this whole thing. What it did to small cities paved the way for what we see in the technical part about this. It actually physically put out of business those side-by-sides that had been there through several of these cycles.
We're seeing more dining coming into shopping centers, especially local chefs. 5 years ago, a landlord wouldn't really go after a local chef because they're probably undercapitalized, they don't have a history of success. But now, dining's become a very integral part as entertainment is, but we're seeing the evolution of shopping becoming more of a community center.